Wow. Another week rolls to an end. And this one went by quite quickly, I think. Here we are, usual place, with you two numbnuts, trying to solve the world's problems, talking about things we know nothing about. And really, these guys really shouldn't be taking us seriously, should they?
No.
Because we have no idea what we're talking about. We're having the same thing.
Yes, it's one of
This
those
is an
rare
historic
occasions.
moment.
Historic, indeed.
Yeah, we
And
convinced Tinashe to have something interesting for once.
And he was so excited, he couldn't even wait. He couldn't
No, I
even
couldn't
wait.
wait. I couldn't wait. I had to taste it.
What is it?
So we're carrying on our detox program, and
Yes.
this is cold pressed juice. It's got carrot, apple, and orange from a local manufacturer called Promega.
No added sugar, no preservatives.
Yeah,
It's a winner.
it's fantastic.
I must say, this sober January thing is getting a bit tired.
Try January.
I'm not sure I'm gonna.
Well, it's our
What are you
penultimate
saying?
week.
What are you saying about us
One more.
sober people?
I have no idea how you guys manage. And you're still wearing ice cream colored pants, I see.
Wow. Yeah. It's summer. Why not?
You've been saying this for like 6 months. How long is
You know-
is this summer of yours?
Well, it's the longest season we have, right? In the southern parts of the equator.
In Zim, we really just have two seasons.
So,
We've got a long summer,
and a short summer.
so let's get this. Sometimes you wear no socks because it's summer. And today you're wearing socks because it's summer.
No. That's not the theory of wearing socks.
Okay, educate me.
Okay, so the utility of wearing socks, it's because it's cold. So it's winter. That's why socks were created. It's because to warm our ankles. So that's the real reason why we wear socks. But socks have now become a fashion accessory. So when you're feeling a little bit adventurous, you can wear happy socks or striped socks or whatever it is.
Which is why yours are always very bright and colorful.
Yeah,
But that doesn't,
I quite like
that doesn't
mine.
dovetail with your personality. You're quite a pessimistic
It's quite
chap.
dark.
Very dull. Well, that's why I need bright socks, right?
But I must say you're wearing decent shoes today. For once you're wearing a pair of shoes I actually think is
You
normal.
like? Okay, so these are churches. I don't know if you're familiar with churches, and yeah, I quite like them as well. Classic style, and
Well, speaking of shoes, reminds us of school. You know, we had to wear brown shoes at Mondays to Fridays.
I remember those Wayne Brenners, right?
Or you could wear any brown shoes you wanted.
But they were mostly made by one manufacturer, if I remember, Bata.
Yes, toughies and grasshoppers. But anyway, talking about schools, our government has deferred the opening of schools yet again. So we find ourselves in a situation where the privileged kids are getting their A-level results because they've done Cambridge or IB. And the majority of kids in this country are still trying to write their 2021
exams.
exams. What do you make of it? I mean, you're quite a believer in this COVID thing.
What do you mean? I'm quite a believer. Well, it's real, isn't it? Are they,
Yes, it is. COVID is real.
are they non-believers?
Okay, well, anyway, what do you make of this?
Well, you're a
Deferment.
believer in lockdowns and
No,
the sort of measures,
I'm
mandatory vaccination.
not a believer in lockdowns. And
Oh,
I'm
okay.
certainly not a believer in mandatory vaccination.
Okay.
Look, I think, lockdowns made sense back in March 2020 when we knew very little and an abundance of caution was justified. But I think we've since learned quite a lot about COVID in the ensuing 18 months. And one of the things that we're alive to is that children tend to be quite safe. Against COVID, they don't seem to suffer severely from it. And so, and the only adults really at schools are the teachers and admin staff, and they should all be vaccinated. So I don't see,
And we're letting them get on Zoom calls.
so I don't really see the wisdom of
So maybe
shutting schools down.
let me take the devil's advocate role for a moment here. If you look at the spread of Omicron in December, a lot of it was in the schools. That's where a lot of schools were actually closed because it was spreading in the schools. So this is again perhaps abundance of caution, where they reckon if we just open schools when we don't have a handle or hold over this, then it's likely to spread. What would you say to that?
No, but Snashe,
Yeah.
look, we're not virologists or epidemiologists.
Epidemiologist, yeah.
Yeah, but what we know is we're letting adults go on crowded buses and go to work. Adults who are much more susceptible to this thing than kids. What we know is probably our single biggest revenue earner as a country is the diaspora. And the raw material for the diaspora is an educated populace.
No,
Our
I
kids
hear
haven't
that.
gone to school properly for 2 years.
No, I'm just playing. Maybe that's the role you're not playing. The
So-
thing
so-
about
so-
kids is
so-
they are not
okay.
going to die.
So to answer your point, I think it's
They're not going to die, but they're carriers.
I think it's
and
a
they can
manage-
carry the virus.
I think it's a management
What
issue
do you think?
because I think we've had 2 years to figure out how to manage schools in such a way that you don't have this, they don't become super spreaders, which is you get the teachers and admin staff vaccinated
No,
and
but
practicing.
I'm sorry, but I think you guys are going down a rabbit hole. Nightclubs are open.
Are they?
In practice, nightclubs are open. Bars are open. And I promise you, it's easier to keep a bunch of kids in order wearing their masks and doing what they should than it is to keep this gentleman here in order at 2 a.m.
Okay, so I'll play again the devil's advocate role again. When you look at bars, they're always very localized, right? So people don't move around. Whereas when you open schools, there's cross country that actually happens, and there's a lot more movement.
Intercity buses are moving right now.
Yeah.
And intercity buses.
Go to showground and you will catch a bus.
Okay,
all the way
so
up.
I've lost that argument.
So, but okay, no. Okay, now that you agree that you've lost the argument, let's talk about
No, I was just playing devil's advocate.
let's talk about the impact.
The devil has lost that argument.
Let's talk about the impact. What is this going to do to the economy? What is it going to do to consumption? I mean, I'll tell you as a farmer that consumption of vegetables has been depressed while schools have been closed, because schools are a big segment of the market, in boarding schools in particular, but also school lunchboxes are a big market segment. What's
But that's
gonna happen to
just
that demand?
delayed, right?
What do you mean it's
So
delayed?
the school year will still run its period, and what has just been delayed is instead of the consumption happening in the
Now-
first week or 2 weeks of January, it's probably going to be elongated to.
I'll be interested if we take a calendar and count the number of school days last year compared to a normal year. I think the actual number of school days was much lower.
I don't have those stats, so I wouldn't be able to comment.
But I suspect you're probably right.
So
Look, it's bad for the economy. I mean, there's just less economic activity when people aren't getting up in the morning, doing school runs, and all the attendant activities around schools. So the multiplier effect on the economy I think it's a net negative. There's just a lot less going on. But hopefully,
I think I'm less worried about the economic impact of the direct consumptive impact. I'm more worried about the kids themselves. That this has been very abnormal. It has actually disrupted the schooling calendar. Kids who haven't written their exams, we haven't seen their exam results, and that will disrupt their entire lives. That's what I'm more worried about. I think the consumption bit less so, but just that this is wrecking kids' life.
But I like that, and let's go down that path for all. It's more than just a kid's life. It's the future of the nation. Because, I mean, face it, writing your A-levels a week after Christmas,
It's probably not a good idea.
when you've hardly been in a classroom for 2 years, I don't think you're going to do that well.
And where you do have a point is that the first world has moved on. The schools are open and they're moving on. Kids are going to university. Their lives are continuing. And us in the undeveloped world, we're
needs the education
holding
more?
back. We need the education more. We are
And this country
at a
specifically
disadvantage.
that relies on diaspora remittances and we're going to produce this half-baked generation.
And it
Are
will
they
be.
going to be suited for the global workplace?
I don't think so.
What's going to happen to other social? I mean, okay, so we already know because the government's admitted, it's been all over the news. The government's worried about increase in all sorts of social ills, including drug abuse, including teenage pregnancies, which seems to correlate with the lockdowns.
Yes.
Um,
Mental health issues,
yeah, and we can
suicides.
we can surmise that increase in teenage pregnancies, probably not very good A-level and O-level results, are seeds for an increase in crime
Later on. in the
later,
years.
later on in the years.
Absolutely. Yeah, makes sense.
But that's just not as
But
Zimbabwean
touch wood,
specific.
in the next couple of weeks, we'll see a return to normalcy, and hopefully they're not going to be more virulent variants of this virus that bring back lockdowns and
But
school closures.
back to George's point, because that's a worldwide issue. What are we doing as a world to curb that? Because this generation is going to have those ills. Mental health problems are going to be on the rise, and a lot of the social issues and illnesses that you've picked up, we're going to see a rise in that. What is the world prepared for that?
What's the solution?
Oh, psychologists. Everybody must see a therapist.
Or maybe we should all, spare time to take on psychology.
But I mean, I think there's one thing we know we can do right now.
Well, I've
We
got an
can put the
answer.
kids back in school.
Yes, absolutely. I think what I was going to answer, the real answer I was going to give you is the sooner the world gets back to normal, the better. I think that the Swedish model, in retrospect, has turned out to be perhaps the best. And really, it was normalcy. So the Swedish model is, how can we live with this virus? Because it's not going anywhere. And I think that in people's estimations, they think that this thing is going away. It's not. It's now part of our lives.
I think the narrative that's going to dominate is this idea that it's going to move from being a pandemic to being endemic.
Endemic,
Just like we have the flu and we have normal colds, we're going to have COVID. It's going to be with us forever, and we just need to figure out how to cope. These dramatic lockdowns and restrictive measures don't work. So we should leave them alone.
Yeah. So I think as far as that is concerned, I think this is a wrong move by the government, because are we saying that if the same were to occur next year, same time, if some sort of variant were to arise, are we going to go back onto a hard lockdown or a soft lockdown? Are we going to close the schools?
Or a lockdown
of any sort? So I think it's about time we start living with this.
We just transcend lockdowns and we just
transcend and we start living with this.
And I mean, I like that you talk about Sweden. I mean, a year and 9 months ago, in early 2020, when Sweden did nothing, literally, everybody thought they were crazy. And their mortalities and everything else looks
the same as
everybody else.
Yeah.
And they haven't given up 1.5 years of GDP growth.
Yeah.
Which the rest of us
they won't have the same social ills that the rest of the world is going to have. And their economy has not suffered as much as the other Scandinavian or European countries. Livelihoods. I think it's very, very, very important to look at livelihoods. And schooling, lives and livelihoods. Schooling is a big part. So I would want the government to seriously think about their policy, especially going forward.
This is strange. Maybe we should stop drinking this. What's in it again? Carrots, apples, and oranges. Because we're all on the same page.
It's called a vision booster. That's him being ironic. Because I don't think our vision is ever going to improve.
No, we're done for. But
I thought you believed in miracles.
Yes, I do.
Okay, this is the time to go for a break.
Is this a miracle moment?
We're going to go away for a couple of minutes, and we'll see you in about 2 minutes. Welcome back. Was that a good visit to the little boys' room?
No comment.
Seems happy enough.
And you brought out something interesting over the break.
Yes, like I said, in this month of sobriety, I would still have interesting drinks, unlike Tinashe.
No, you just don't like tea.
So yeah, we have some sparkling grape juice. Bubbles.
Yeah. Andreas, Blake Family Wines. What country is it from?
South Africa, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, no, we're not cheating. We're not starting to drink alcohol. But yeah, we're gonna try something interesting. Tinashe, you're gonna stick with the
For now.
oranges and carrots.
Yeah, I actually
Maybe
like this.
it'll actually improve your vision.
Like I said, it's just this guy.
Not just optical, but cognitive as well.
In the news this week, the governor says he's not going to try and chase the rate. He's happy with the gap between the parallel and the official staying where it is. Raises a few questions. I'm sure you're going to come in and say, but we thought it was an auction. So why is he even making a comment about this? But maybe we'll leave that aside.
Well, we know it's not an auction; it's a managed float.
But do you have any idea why he might be saying that? Why he might be taking to go this route?
Because remember when they introduced the auction and what's actually happening at the auction, they've taken a very strong stance, right? And we have to appreciate that. And their stance is to support the productive sector, as far as they're concerned, by taking 40% from the exporters and then pumping that at a subsidized rate, close to 50% of the power market rate to importers, their chosen importers. So this is a government policy that they've taken, which is really directed at the productive sector. That's what they say. But what I would like to bring to your attention and to everybody's attention is let's contrast what Mangujga is saying and what his counterpart in South Africa is saying. Because it's actually very interesting what Kanyongo in South Africa is actually saying about the same things. And he came out very emphatically and he said that as a central bank, there's no way we create jobs, no production, nor are we in any way involved in economic growth. Our principle is really price stability, and that's what we stick to, right? And he came out very strong because he was being attacked that why is the central bank not doing enough to promote jobs and to promote production? And he says, no, that's not my remit. That's actually the government's remit.
So you'd like to see a withdrawn central bank, a smaller central bank?
It's far much smaller. I don't know. I don't even understand why the central bank governor is coming out and saying these statements. I don't understand why he's playing in the forex market. I don't understand why he's engaging himself in the productive sectors and quasi-fiscal
So if he
activities.
doesn't, who should?
Well, the government, he should take it back to where it belongs. Chikwambo, I just Chikwambo Chake.
Chikwambo Chamtuli.
Take it back. This has nothing to do with him,
But
and he should just be strict.
But then
to
what space does Mtuli have to deal with this if he's not using the currency to do it?
Okay, so that's actually a brilliant intervention, George. Because what you're actually saying to us is, if the owners of Chikwambo cannot deal with it, what about Mutoro?
Mporofita. So
and what every central bank around the world is telling us is this is not about profits and sorcery. This is about sticking to the constitutional mandate of a central bank, which is purely price stability.
And that's well and good.
And the minute you start dabbling,
you've got. So if you're gonna talk about international central banks or other central banks, the Fed's, the U.S. central bank's mandate is not just price stability; it's also full employment. So it's not necessarily the case that a central bank trying to ensure that there's full employment is acting outside of its mandate.
That's not the Fed's mandate. Full employment is not the Fed's
Well, they've got a dual mandate. The employment and inflation. They've got an inflation target and they've got an employment target.
Employment, when we say, and when they do say employment, so first of all, it's the Fed's structure is very, very, very limited, and it's issuance of currency and price stability, and to help full employment. But they don't drive full employment
guys,
at all.
Okay, so the Fed is far away. Here we are in Zimbabwe. We've got all these problems. We've got high unemployment. We've got lots of poor people.
The central bank cannot solve any of those problems.
But let's calm down. Have a sip of that.
Or two.
Look, we have all these problems.
It's actually delicious.
I told you, I'd bring more interesting drinks than what you
Well done.
usually have.
Well done.
No heated shrub juice. We have all these problems. If we are not going to use the currency to solve them, how else can we solve them? We need better roads. We need to sort out our electricity infrastructure. We need to let our poor catch up. What other mechanism do we have for dealing with this?
So, okay, wait. The way I would look at it is from a pragmatic perspective.
Yes.
Okay, so whether or not theory tells us our monetary policy is correct or wrong over the last 3-4 years, let's set that aside for a minute and just ask ourselves the question: has it produced the desired outcomes? Okay, so over the last 3 years, the narrative from government and central bank and the central bank has been that they care about price stability, about a strong local currency that engenders confidence in everybody in the country. Have they achieved that outcome with the policy action they've taken over the last 3-4 years? And I think the answer, inflation has come down at 60% per annum. If you had $100 at the beginning of last year, in real terms, you lost 60% of it. Is that a desirable outcome in your mind?
Better than it was before.
Okay, so it's less bad.
Yes. Which we've established is less bad is a real thing. We've established on this show.
Have we also established that it's good to celebrate mediocrity?
It's not even mediocrity. It's worse than that. The inflation rate has come down by fixing the exchange rate. But to your point, and I keep emphasizing this, the problems that you want solved cannot be solved by a central bank anywhere in the world. Not just Zimbabwe.
So how can they be solved? Okay,
so you need FDI, you need savings, you need macroeconomic stability. So the big issue is stability. Someone intimated something that I thought was very, very interesting, that if you go to Kuwait or any of these Middle Eastern countries, that they've got certain laws that are not investor friendly. But these laws have been running for 50 years. So there's some sort of predictability. If you look at the DRC, which is no haven whatsoever for even buccaneer entrepreneurs, cannot make it in the DRC. But you see people pumping money in the DRC. And part of it is predictability over a longer period of time.
You can build a model.
And this is the point we're trying to make. Predictability cannot be found at the central bank. Predictability goes back to the government's policy, macroeconomic policy. But what tends to happen is that they set out their rules and their laws and what they want to achieve, but something goes wrong somewhere along or down the road, and then they tend to fall back to the central bank, seeking that short high, that sugar high, not realizing that sugar high will put them into, or will actually compound the problem. So what we need to do is understand that the central bank cannot solve Zimbabwe's ills at all.
So when they're in this space where they're in a crunch, they need some money, what should they do? If they're in a crunch and they need money, if they're the South African government or indeed a lot of other governments in the world, what do?
They do a roadshow.
Well, they don't even need to. If it's a little bit of money, they do a TB auction.
Oh, we did that already. We've crowded out the
No, but
productive sector.
we're also under sanctions. So we do a TB auction, and the only money that comes is local money. We don't have foreign money that comes in to buy our TB.
The problem is,
Afreximbank, you've got the Chinese.
But we've maxed out. We've maxed out.
And that's the problem.
We didn't pay the Chinese.
It's a confidence issue. I mean, if you think about $5-10 billion in the context of our economy, That's a lot of money that would provide price stability. If you think about it in the context of global capital markets, it's tiny. It's a drop in the ocean. It's nothing. So we should, under ordinary circumstances, be able to raise $5-10 billion US quite easily at the drop of a hat.
We're not predictable.
But we haven't, and we cannot, because we don't enjoy the confidence of global capital markets.
No, but
it's very volatile.
But what about Zadera?
Yeah, what about it?
Yeah, what about it?
You've got Zadera, which instructs American citizens on multilateral boards to vote against any money coming here. Most of these investors that you're talking about take a cue from the World Bank Group. And as long as Zim is red on the World Bank map, we're not going to be approved for investment by the World Bank Group.
In the last 5 years, we've borrowed more internationally than we've done in the 40 years of independence.
Is that a fact?
Fact.
What are the numbers?
So we've borrowed, I would say about 5 billion, 5-6 billion.
From who?
Afrexim Bank, the Chinese, mostly Afrexim Bank and the Chinese.
So people we don't have to pay back.
And the kind of people that you're talking about who
have to pay
care
back.
about what the IMF and World Bank thinks before they invest money, they invest huge amounts of money. But Zimbabwe is a tiny frontier market. The kind of investors who are interested in a market like ours have quite high risk appetite, and they don't care about Zadera.
I tend to agree with him.
They're investing in the DRC, and they're investing
in the DRC. The World Bank has an adverse report on the DRC, but they're pumping in $4 billion every year. In FDI, Mozambique, people are pumping in money. Part of it is predictability, and this is where I differ with you, that it's actually not a question of confidence.
But confidence and predictability, aren't they the same?
Well, one begets the other.
No, actually, I agree with you there.
Yeah.
Actually, they're not the same. It's a false equivalent, because you can have confidence in an unpredictable environment.
Okay.
That's why money goes into the Congo. You don't open a mine in the Congo and have high conviction that in 5 years' time you'll still be the person operating that mine. But it's predictable.
It's par for the course.
So you can price it in that there is an X% probability that somebody will come and take my mine.
Mm-hmm.
But where he's right is, once you have that predictability over a longer period of time, then you have the confidence to actually then say, oh, okay, I think I can predict what's going to happen in the next. And, I highlight something that's very important. Over the last 10 years, we've had 3 or 4, in fact, it's 5 SIs that have in somewhat changed the currency of use. Now, you're not going to face that problem in Mozambique. You're not going to face that problem in the DRC. But in Zim, over a 10-year period, we've changed the currency of use 5 times.
Yeah, that's insane.
And do you know that it's still illegal to use US dollars? Did you know that?
We were given a special dispensation.
Because of COVID?
Yeah, it's a COVID. Yeah, you're right.
So if we wake up tomorrow and there's no COVID, then we have...
They can change.
They can change. So if you want to lend somebody US dollars for 5 years, you don't know that their business will be generating US dollars to pay you in 5 years.
5 years, yeah. So it has to be
And how do you
predictable.
price that in? It's hard.
It's very difficult. That's our problem. It has to be predictable. We can't go through 10 years where you're changing currency every other 2 years. Right? It has to be predictable. But once we inject that predictability over a long period of time, then yes, you start seeing the Buccaneer capital from Russia, from the East, even from the West.
Yeah,
coming.
I mean, and just to torpedo your point about Zadera, further,
In case it's not thoroughly clear.
if between 2009 and 2013 during the GNU, it was still applicable.
In effect, yeah.
Yeah, but you had foreign investors flying in all the time and seriously considering and actually making significant investments in our country. So I don't think that of all the excuses we can dream up for lack of foreign investment, I don't think Zadera is a valid one.
That's not. It's predictability.
Good place to take another break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Elsewhere in the news this week, Cottco, out of the blue, nobody's heard anything from them. You remember, it's a listed company. Nobody's heard anything from them for a couple of years. Out of the blue, issues a trading update. And guess what the gist of the trading update is? They're looking for 800 million Zim dollars to pay farmers for cotton they bought when?
2 years ago.
Well, okay, not quite 2 years ago, but about 9 months ago. Why are they looking for money to pay farmers for cotton they bought? Weren't they supposed to have sold the cotton for more money and have had a profit? What's gone wrong there?
Everything that can go wrong. What's Murphy's Law?
Yeah, Murphy's Law.
No, is this Murphy's Law?
If it can...
With Cottco, I mean, if you
If
think
it can
about
go
it,
wrong, it can.
and everything,
will. Yeah, rather.
it will, and everything that can go wrong goes wrong, right? Well, this was a over 300 million turnover company,
USD.
you know.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time, and it was huge. And there's absolutely no reason why that company shouldn't be, well, the sector, because I understand that you've got a lot more players that have come into
No, they've monopolized the sector.
Well, yeah, government has directed that it be that way, but the other players are still there. They're still in the market. You've got Cargill, you've got Olam, you've got Cottco. Those are the three big, and then lots of other sectors, other players. But the point is, this is livelihoods. People's livelihoods depend on cotton because of where they are, the regions that they operate in, arid areas of the country, and Cottco played an integral role in our economy.
So what happened?
So-
I mean, to me, it seems basic.
It's government intervention.
Do you know what a
I
ginnery
would
does?
say.
So Cottco is just a bunch of ginneries, right? Do you know what a ginnery does? A ginnery is a big comb. You put the cotton in this big comb, it combs it and takes out the seeds and other trash, and then you put it in a bale and you sell it. I mean, how
It doesn't
hard
get
is this?
simpler than that.
Yes, and your suppliers, the farmers, have been trained since time immemorial that the price you pay them is a function of the global price. So you can't lose. You tell them this is the price internationally.
You
I'll
do
give you-
lose when government intervenes, because what actually happens with cotton prices is they're extremely volatile, the commodity prices internationally. But if it was pure private hands, it's better to manage.
Or rather, free markets.
Free markets, it's better to manage the volatility. But what happens is government comes in and gives a floor price, right? That is not feasible for Cottco. And then they end up being subsidized by government.
Well, clearly not, because
Well,
they're
now-
looking.
They've got a hole, and it's lots more.
Yeah,
I mean,
they
800
cannot
million
sustain
dollars.
that hole at all, you know. So you've got this where the price hikes. You've got moments where the price is extremely good, and you have moments when the price is not as good or not as great. But yeah, I think it's a very sad case that we find Cottco in.
Solution?
Liberalization of the market, totally.
No, but then these poor farmers, they're going to get abused by capitalists.
No, they're not.
No, they're not.
They will figure it out. You know, if they're not making money from cotton, they will grow something else.
Well, they
Well,
cannot.
in fairness,
they
mostly
cannot.
cut.
But in good times, they will learn to perhaps save more in the good times, because cotton prices actually go really high, and in the good times, a cotton farmer can earn quite a bit of money, and all it just tells you is that in those good times, maybe that's the time you should invest in solar. I'm not advertising solar, but perhaps capital equipment, perhaps get into some sort of irrigation scheme or whatever it is. to
Diversify,
move away,
yeah.
diversify.
But we've talked about this on the show before as well, which is the need to allow GMO cotton.
Oh yeah, that's another
because
big
the GMO
thing.
cotton is affecting the world prices.
Well, it's not the it's not the GMO cotton that's necessary. It's the pesticide, the GMO pesticides.
Oh, you were listening.
I do. I was actually quite surprised that you used that argument, because that's the argument I always had, and then we were schooled.
No, well, no. Well, it's the pesticide, but it's the the actual kind of cotton you grow
Yeah.
is resilient to certain chemicals, herbicides and pesticides.
Yes.
And it's resilient to herbicides and it's resilient to certain pests, the bollworm, which means the cost of growing it comes down and the yield goes up.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is the global price is always under pressure from these farmers in America and other places who are growing this cheap
Because of those
cheap cotton because of those advantages.
advantages. Yeah.
And there's no real reason under the sun why we can't grow
GMO cotton.
We
So
are
that's
probably
the
wearing clothes
liberalization
made from
from
GMO cotton.
And that's the liberalization we're talking about. That right
Just let the market decide.
Just let the market decide. Let GMO come in, not just in cotton, but even in maize. Everywhere.
Across the board.
Across the board, we just need to open it up.
I mean, we all
I
have
don't
relatives
understand.
in America and in Europe who are eating GMO food all the time. Have any of your cousins grown a third eye?
No, actually, they live longer than Zimbabweans anyway.
Yeah. So, I don't know. But we'll give you a soapbox this week. Please don't make us regret this. I know one of the things you've been big on this week is you've been talking about whether it is right for us to print money for infrastructure. So we'll give you a bit of a soapbox.
Thank you.
But if you say something stupid, we're going to knock you off that box
Okay,
so
all right,
fast that
okay.
you won't know.
I'll try and behave. But I think generally everybody agrees that printing for infrastructure does not work. It's not going to work at all. And I think that we need to position our infrastructure.
What, does everyone agree?
Well, I think that those.
That's obviously not true. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it. So,
Well, I think a lot of it is propaganda driven. So we need to be aware. So that's why we're bringing this discourse that actually, guys, let's move away from the propaganda, right? And why I'm saying it's the propaganda is because the contractors themselves that are making money off this infrastructure are the ones that are actually pushing the propaganda. So I don't necessarily think that it's government, but if government says we want to spend on infrastructure and you're a contractor, what are you going to do? You're going to raise your voice and advertise and market as much as possible.
okay, so let's get to the merits of your
your
argument. Does printing for infrastructure make sense?
No, it doesn't. So I
And
wanted
why?
to move on.
Why is that?
Because printing is debasement of currency. So whichever way you look at it, the dollar that you spend on the infrastructure is going to a contractor, and that contractor is going to beat up all the prices in the market. Money is
Well,
fungible.
for goods and services
Money is
related to
fungible.
building a road or a bridge or whatever article of infrastructure that we're talking to.
it actually ends up being at beer halls and everywhere else. It raises.
We don't go to beer halls.
Well, you don't, but some people do. But it raises the amount of money in the economy. So never mind that it was a noble idea, which is infrastructure, but what it just does, it just expands money, and it's just like any money.
But surely,
expansion.
I'm gonna be the devil's advocate here and say that so one could potentially print and give every citizen 10,000 Zim dollars, and we would succeed in debasing the currency, and we wouldn't have anything to show for it, right? Now, if we were to print and we dualized Bedbridge, Chirundu, for example, yes, we would, according to your argument, debase the currency and cause a bunch of inflation, but we would have a dual road to show for it. Is it not better?
Revenues. And we'd have revenues of increased
We would
traffic.
have toll gates and we would have increased revenues.
Okay, so you're actually saying you want to actually take more risk. That's what you're saying.
No, I'm not
Because
talking
if
about.
you-
I'm saying.
But
I'm-
let me argue.
we
the
can
case,
agree that
right?
printing is bad, right? But for infrastructure, surely it's better.
No,
It's less bad.
Oh, it's
No.
less bad.
no, you're actually saying it's actually riskier because in the two instances that you've given me, the one that's actually less bad is actually giving consumers 10,000 and they
Do whatever they want to.
do whatever they want with it. Because when you look at infrastructure, first it's going to be the quantum is going to be a whole lot more. You're going to
No,
import.
I'm talking about the same amount of money.
Yeah, well, you're going to import goods, products, right?
so will
that will
consumers.
have
So will consumers.
no,
yeah?
no. Consumers are more likely to spend the currency on whatever is available in the market. Whereas if you're building a road, you're going
Yes,
to
but there are imported goods available
They're
in the market,
imported.
surely.
No, you're being disingenuous.
You-
Okay, let me give you a more direct example.
no, but-
Let me because we're running out of
I'm
time.
not going to answer that.
But
I want to fully answer
No,
Ruforo's.
I want to give you an example which brings your two
Yeah.
arguments closer together and makes a more direct comparison. You have a road in town that's full of potholes. Right now, we have a big consumption bill for importing spares for cars that go down
Including tires and
that go
rims.
down that pothole road. We print some money. We have a once-off bill for fixing the road, and then this consumption bill goes away. Is that bad?
Yes, it is bad. But if you just allow me to speak, because what tends to happen is, somewhere
if you speak
along,
nonsense,
and then, well, that's the problem. The problem is you think it's nonsense, but it's actually quite erudite.
Okay.
Principles, right? Is that it's a very noble cause, right? And it speaks to our hearts. What you've just done is just really speak to our emotions, speak to our hearts that look at all these potholes. So let me print. And that is what, what's that saying about the road to hell?
Being paved in good intentions.
Paved in good intentions. So it's a very noble idea. But unfortunately, what you're just doing is you're increasing the money supply. And when you increase the money supply, yes, you're filling in that pothole, but that money will end up actually debasing the entire currency in issue. So you're helping a certain section of society, which is those that are driving in those potholes, but you're actually, you're disadvantaging the entire society. So that's the first principle of printing. That yes, there's no one who prints with bad, ignoble intentions, one hopes. But the propaganda is especially positioned that way, the way you've positioned the portal, that the propaganda is, look, we're printing money, yes, but this is a very noble cause. But what we're saying is your noble cause is actually affecting the entire, your savers, depositors, your mbuya who's in Mzarabani, who's saved her little money.
Give her a rest.
And she's probably figured out that sitting on a bank balance is not
It's
clever.
not a good idea.
Yeah.
And that's the lack of confidence again. But I wanted to come back to Ruforo's point about the risk that, okay, increased traffic. But what if the reverse happens? What if traffic actually...
We still have a nice road.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. There you go. So I don't think that government should take a risk with citizens' money, because it's very possible that you could build an airport, you could build
A bridge.
and nobody uses that bridge. It's very possible. That's the risk that you're taking. And I think you and I will agree that a lot of how America was built, a lot of the infrastructure was actually done by private hands. A lot of the water supplies in Europe is done by private hands. I don't understand why Harare municipality has to control the water.
Well, I live in a small village in this country where our water supply is private.
Yeah, exactly. I don't
And it
understand
works.
why.
And
A railway, I don't understand
my kids don't drink bottled water. They go to a tap and pour a glass, and it's safe.
Yeah. And that's probably where we should go. That what needs to happen is it needs to be taken away from government.
Not necessarily taken away. I think it
municipality.
should just be opened up. And if they want to be a player, well, they really shouldn't be, but they should compete in a
with
free
everybody
market
else.
without any built-in advantages.
They used to compete in a free market. They used to have a monopoly on beer holes. The market got opened up. Guess what happened to government
Disappeared.
or municipal beer holes?
Disappear.
They all went bust
Yeah.
and shut down.
Yeah.
We won't get into the details because it's a funny story. But
But unfortunately, we've got to say goodbye now. It's been good having you along. As usual, don't take us too seriously. I mean, especially this guy.
having my vision booster.
Yes, we've established that it doesn't work cognitively.
It probably impairs
Cognition.
But COVID is real. Stay safe. Have a good weekend. Please discuss some of these issues with the people around you. And as usual, if you've got access to people that have influence, people that make these decisions, please raise some of these issues with them. So together we build a better Zimbabwe. And maybe our children might thank us for some of these discussions. Have a good weekend. Stay safe. COVID is real. Be good. If you can't be good at it.